Hello, Jordan.
What's up, Michael?
The sale is over.
Done.
So please, no more emails. You missed your chance, unfortunately.
Please, no more.
We said it once, we said it 100 times. It's, when the sale's over, the sale's over. There's no more sneaking in. There's no extras. There's no freebies. There's no special handouts. It's just...
Welcome to everyone who joined. Congrats to everyone who made that amazing decision to join. I love it.
Absolutely. Huge congratulations. We're very excited. Let's dive in. What's happening? You're not feeling the best.
No, I've got a little sore throat, so I got a Ricola. That's not a paid advertisement, by the way. I got a little Ricola in there, so if you hear a little clanking around in between my teeth, I apologize. Hopefully David, our amazing podcast editor, can help with that, but yeah, I got a little sore throat, but overall everything's good.
You have a sore throat, but we're knocking out back-to-back pods.
Oh yeah.
You're still looking after your daughter, you're still doing your workout, you're still doing what you have to do.
My wife was very concerned about doing back-to-back podcasts with a sore throat. She was like, "Shouldn't you cancel?" I was like, "No. Sometimes you got to do stuff you don't want to do."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In fact, one could argue that that's the point of life.
One could argue that.
Consistently doing things you don't want to do.
Yeah. That's definitely how you achieve certain things in life.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling?
I feel good. Just hit a little leg day, legs and abs, flying to Arizona.
Going to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl.
I'm going to the town that the Super Bowl is in to coach Gary in the mornings, and then I'm flying back, and I actually land back home like 20 minutes before kickoff. So no, I'm not going to.
Oh, you're not even going to be there during the Super Bowl. Got it. You're just there. Well, like leading up to it while he's having meetings and stuff.
Super Bowl tickets are like $10,000.
No, I know that, but I thought you were going to stay there and then coach him the day after the Super Bowl.
No, Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning workouts, and then back home. It's kind of like, remember back, I know it's been a while now, but in your days of coaching Gary, people would be like, man, you get to travel and you get to see all these different cities and countries.
You see the inside of your hotel room, yeah. And the gym that you work out in with Gary.
Yeah. It's not just vacation all the time.
But it's also different because back then we were grinding constantly. And now it's like, oh, you know what? I'll get my work done in the morning and coach Gary, and then maybe I could see you going on a little hike in Arizona. A little desert hike?
Yeah, absolutely correct. I'm not on technology working for 12 to 14 hours a day at this point. Although who knows?
Could be.
No, not 12 to 14 hours at this point. But yeah, man, that's what's going on with me.
What are you sipping on? Is that just straight water?
It's just
BCAAs.
No, it's just water. I was trying to think of something remotely witty or funny, but it's just water out of the fridge. Out of that filter.
Oh man, I've always wanted one of those refrigerators. One of the refrigerators that have like water and ice come out of it.
You don't have that?
No, I've always wanted one.
I have a hard time believing you really don't have one in your apartment there?
I swear to God, I don't have that.
Okay, yeah, easy. I believe you.
In my new house, I would like one eventually. But I remember growing up, like we had like a 70s fridge growing up. Like those like old refrigerators.
Of course.
Like little like wooden handle that opens it up. Yeah, we had like the ice trays. The ice trays.
Of course.
Had to fill them back up every time you took it. Is that what you had growing up?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Fill them up with that beautiful tap water, and then sometimes like someone would just leave one cube left in there, and you get really annoyed at whoever in the family made that move.
I hated that.
Yeah. I probably did that more than anyone else in my family, so I'm to blame more than they are.
There was a prank shop. They had this like joke shop in Quincy Market in Boston. It was like just a prank shop. So I got, like whoopee cushions and fart machines and all that stuff there. But one of the things I got was an ice cube. It was a fake ice cube with a bug inside. Mm-hmm. And my mom would get so mad when I would put that in the ice tray. Because break it up, boom, put it in and they put it in their cup, and all of a sudden they're looking in their cup. They're like, "What the fuck is in my?"
That's good. That's good. That was a classic along with the whoopee cushion.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Remember the time when I told you that I randomly cry and you didn't believe me? And I was like, no, bro, I actually like in a random movie or in like a random moment in life.
Was this on a podcast or
No, it was just in a conversation.
Yeah.
And
I remember that.
And you were like laughing and you're like, no, you don't. You thought I was like bullshitting you basically.
Yeah.
Season 5, Game of Thrones, Samwell Tarly's speech for Jon to be Lord Commander. This was like 3 nights ago. Tears.
You started bawling?
No, not bawling, but like tears.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I don't even know why.
Like legit tears? Like a lot of tears?
How are we going to quantify it? Yes, there were tears.
Like more than one?
Sure. My eyes welled up with emotion. And I'm going to continue to track these and let you know. I just said, I don't know. You'll get there soon enough. You continue to hit that cardio, watch that Game of Thrones, not pivot shows or anything, you'll get there.
I'm on, season 2, episode 3, something like that, when Catelyn Stark is talking about.
I thought you were deep into season 2.
I don't think so. Somewhere like between, either way, Catelyn Stark is at her uncle's house or something, or castle. And not a house, and she's like sitting in the window talking about how every time her father would go away to war, he'd be like, wait for me, Cat, wait for me, and she'd be like sitting in the window every morning, like waiting for him, and then and then I started thinking, I was like, oh man, like now I'm thinking of like my daughter, like if I go away on a business trip, like that really hit home for me for sure. I didn't cry, but I don't think I've ever seen you cry.
Like you. I didn't cry. Wouldn't make me cry. Yeah. Season 5 is underrated though. I forgot. In my mind, 3 and 4, like 4 was the peak in my mind, but everything going on around Castle Black in season 5 is really solid. And one of the most underrated character arcs that I like really didn't pay any attention to and really didn't think a lot of him, but a lot of the interactions in season 5 with Stannis are really interesting.
Interesting. Okay. All right. I'm excited to get there.
He's like the dark side of ISTJ, which is not who you want to be, obviously, but it's interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff going on, like with Stannis and the Red Woman and all that. Yeah.
Especially in season 2. Like, I know what you're talking about, but the season 5 interactions between him and Jon Snow, because Stannis knew Ned Stark so well, and then watching those two's back and forth in like episodes 1 through 5 of season 5, really interesting.
How's your wife like in Game of Thrones?
You know, she tolerates it. Doesn't love the violence, doesn't, sometimes like would rather just throw a comedy on and like not really have to think or have me explain certain things. But
there's a lot of thinking in Game of Thrones. That's not a passive watch thing.
Right. She's much more into it in seasons 4 and 5 than she was in season 2, for example.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
All right. I got one for you. I want to see if we're aligned on this.
Okay.
What are the possible scenarios that you think are going on with a coaching client who continually begs you to do more?
Yeah, so let's break it down first into there are different types of this client, right? So there's one client who continually begs you to do more, but they're not even doing what you're already giving them. Right? So it's like, but I want more. Or the person who's like, I want you to lower my calories. It's like, but you're not even hitting these. Like, you keep going way over. So why am I going to reduce it even more? Or the person who's like, oh, could we do like 5 training days? It's like, you've been like 40% consistent with 3 training days. So why would I do that?
And I want to make a quick distinction. I was talking specifically about training frequency, training volume, more exercises, longer workouts, sweatier workouts. I actually, with certain clients, there are clients who it's like, if you're not hitting these calories, why would we reduce them? But then there are certain instances where a rapid fat loss phase makes sense, or like a shorter challenge makes sense. But continue. But because that's interesting, because I didn't even consider the client who wants more training volume, who's not actually doing the workouts.
Yeah. I mean, my immediate thought went to like the whole, it depends, right? And I was like, well, what does it depend on? It depends on the client. And like, here are the different types of clients that might be saying that. I will say in terms of the client who's like, hey, I want you to reduce my calories, but they haven't actually been hitting it anyway. You're right. I would say like the main instance for me would be it wouldn't just be me indefinitely reducing their calories. It would be me being like, hey, for 7 days, let's do a 7-day challenge where let's try and do this, like to like prove it will work if you actually stick with it. But the other client who wants more is the person who is actually doing everything, but they're just like a glutton for punishment. And they also like, they love it. Like they truly love working out. Like they get a lot from it mentally and emotionally. They like really like beating themselves into the ground, like almost masochistic in that sense. And the way that I often look at it is not everything needs to be optimal on paper, right? Like in terms of sometimes I will give someone who doesn't like working out something that's not optimal on paper, but will allow them to be consistent with it because the enjoyment factor, and because it'll just help them with consistency. So a lot of times with those people they're being super consistent with their training, their nutrition, their sleep, and they just want more, I'm not just going to say no just because it's not optimal. Like very few things in life are optimal. I will give them something, and usually I'll make it something ridiculously hard with as low of an impact and as low of a stress on their nervous system as possible so that it has the least amount of negative effect on it. Because if I don't write it for them, they will either add it themselves and probably do something stupid, or they'll find another coach who's going to just drive them into the ground. So I'll find ways to make it more difficult for them without making it inappropriate.
Can you give a quick example of what adding more work that does fry the CNS looks like relative to giving them what feels like more work that isn't going to kill them or risk injury?
Yeah, I mean, for one would just be like adding way more volume at high intensities. Like adding for example, instead of doing 3 sets of 5 deadlifts, let's go like even doing like German volume training. It's like, all right, well, that's just going to destroy you. Or doing something where it's like, instead of 3 sets of 5, we're going to go to 5x5. A 5x5 is really only good for brand new beginners. And that's sort of accounting for the fact that the first couple sets are still warm-ups anyway. It's like I would not add more volume with high intensity compound movements. I would also not add a ton of high intensity intervals, doing like whether it's like insane sprints. And especially one thing, for example, that I actually really like doing in this scenario is if, let's say, the person wants to do more sprinting, right? I will have them do a sprint on a bike or an elliptical, not on the treadmill. When I add more, some of it might be on a treadmill, but the extra stuff, I'm not going to have them sprint on a treadmill. The extra stress on the ankles, on the knees, on the hips, on the back, the risk of tearing a hamstring off the bone, like it's just not worth it. I've never seen anybody get injured on the elliptical unless it's them like falling off, or like I've never seen someone get injured from sprinting on a bike type of a thing. It's like a stationary bike. So having something like that is a really good tool. There's also something to be said for there are ways to draw out more out of a high intensity sprinting session. So for example, you can do more total sets if you have more rest in between, right? You can do more total work if you space your rest properly. So an appropriate amount of rest, for example, you could do just as a crude example, you could do 8 sets of 20 seconds working and 60 seconds rest, right? And that, like, those 20 seconds working would add up to a significant amount of total volume and high intensity during doing that. But sometimes what I'll do is, rather than just say like, hey, let's do 8, 10, 12 sets of this with a bunch of high intensity, I'll literally just say, go for 5 minutes as hard as you can. One round of 5 minutes. Because if they start off as hard, and I'll say, I want you to go as hard as you can from the very beginning. No cheating, no trying to continue, like, to sort of hold back. I want you to go as hard as you can from the very beginning. How long can you sprint for? Like maybe 15 to 20 seconds at absolute max. Then after that, it's inherently submaximal for the rest of it. And so you get literally like 1 20-second sprint. By the end of it, they're fucking exhausted because it's a 5-minute session, but they really only were at like peak maximal force and output for the first 15, 20 seconds. And then the rest, it's like it's inherently lower intensity. So that is one way that you can manage it.
I love it. 2 great examples and of specific programming instances, and then 2 good client examples. The person who is actually not doing anything but wants more, and then the person who is a glutton for punishment, so to speak. That second one is definitely one of the main client types who will request doing more. The other one that I see commonly is someone who isn't making the type of progress that they want to make, or whether that's speed of progress or no progress on the weight loss front, on the muscle gain front, usually one of those 2, on the physique in the mirror front. So they're not making the type of progress that they want to make. And usually, additionally, they're not bringing enough intensity to each individual set. Mm-hmm. So getting nowhere close to failure, maybe sloppy technique, not controlling the weights and leaving way too many reps in reserve, and then feeling like I need to change something to start making progress because I'm not seeing the type of progress I want to make, and thinking more exercises, more sets, longer workouts, more days per week is the solution to the problem. When in reality, the solution to the problem, especially someone who's kind of past the newbie gains phase and wants to be making better progress, isn't to do 40 sets in a workout instead of 18. It's to take those 18 sets way more seriously and much closer to failure.
Yeah, that's a great point as well. That person who's like, oh, it's not hard enough, and then you like, well, how long are you resting? 30 seconds. It's like, okay, well, clearly you're not lifting heavy enough. Yeah,
that's a good one. Yep, not resting long enough, or just like mentally. And I'll have these clients, all right, send me a one working set of X movement to take a look. And I don't say when I'm not sending that email and saying, all right, and I want to see how close to failure you're getting here. I'm just saying, hey, I just want to take a look at one working set. Leg extension, barbell back squat, whatever it is. I want to see one working set. And then, okay, how many reps, once I get it back, how many reps do you think you had left? I see 6 reps. Gun to head, I know this person could have done 20. Well, there's your answer.
Pick more weight up. Do you think the Lumen device is worth it?
I don't know what Lumen device is, but I was thinking about devices a lot today. I was actually thinking about devices because there was a YouTube pre-roll ad for Whoop and talking about how this will tell you based on these metrics whether or not you should work out that day or not. And even body battery on the Garmin, which after a week I hit it because I don't want subjective measures. I only want things that I know are accurately measured. Similar to how I'm not going to be paying attention to calorie expenditure on a treadmill because there's no good way to measure calorie expenditure. There's no good way to, like, sure, we'll take your heart rate, we'll take your sleep quality, like to the extent we can track it off your wrist. We'll take HRV to the extent we can track it off your wrist. We'll take these factors and tell you whether or not we think that you should have a training day or a rest day today. and it's not accounting for other things too, like overreaching, for example. There should be periods in a program that are higher stress than other periods in a program, and your watch is going to see you had 2 hard workouts in a row and tell you not to do the third one, when maybe it was the intention to have a really hard week, and then knowing that we're going to back off in volume and intensity the next week. I just don't think we're there yet with watch. So I don't know anything about the Lumen device specifically. Obviously, I just kind of jumped to an assumption about what it is, but I like the hard objective data off of these devices, steps being one of them that are pretty accurately tracked, heart rate being one of them that is pretty accurately tracked. But when you get into these measures like body battery or stress or things that we don't, that are less concrete, and then we're making decisions about training day or rest day, or should I work out hard or take it easy based on that feedback, I just don't think that feedback is useful enough to rely on yet.
Yeah. Makes total sense. Lumen is different in that you breathe into it and it tells you if you're burning fat or burning carbohydrates.
Cool. Yeah.
And basically the marketing around that is saying, I Googled what exactly does Lumen do, and it says Lumen is the world's first handheld portable device to accurately measure metabolism. It will provide a daily personalized nutrition and meal plan, as well as other insights to your sleep, workouts, meal timing, etc. Basically, the major component is saying, are you burning fat or are you burning carbohydrates? And if the idea is that you're burning carbohydrates, then you can't be losing body fat. So you have to change your nutrition around based on that, which is obviously horseshit.
Yeah.
But what do you think about it?
What do I think about that concept? I think rather than spending your money on Lumen, track how many calories you're eating consistently over time. And that is the way to lose body fat.
Yep. Which style of lifting is better for long-term joint health, powerlifting or bodybuilding?
Bodybuilding.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, like if you're saying just utilize powerlifting, like utilize big 3 moves in your programming with proper technique, like really paying attention to intensity. Of course, you can design a program that promotes longevity and leads to your joints being fine. But if you look at the people who lifted the heaviest weights for many, many years, squat, bench, deadlift, and watch them move around at age 65 or even younger than that, for so many of them, it's not pretty at all. Talking spine, talking hips, knees, shoulders, elbows, everything.
You know what I think is one of the biggest issues here that goes sort of under the radar in regard to powerlifting versus bodybuilding and which is better for joint health? I think more than even the type of movements that's going on, because powerlifters and bodybuilders, they use a lot of the same movements. I think that powerlifters historically, because the goal of powerlifting is to lift as much as you can, they too often lift as much as they can. And they lift way too heavy on too consistent of a basis, which is not good for your joints. Whereas bodybuilders, because they don't care how much they lift. They care about how big they can get. And they know how big they can get stems from how much mechanical tension they can place on the muscles. And they know they can do that more easily and readily with an 8 to 12 repetition range as opposed to a 1 to 5 repetition range. So they inherently lift lighter weights, so that then they can not put as much stress on their body. Now, they will also often use more isolation type exercises because they're trying to focus on specific muscle groups as opposed to maximizing leverages to lift as much as possible. Powerlifters will use certain leverages that put them in pain while they do it, but because it yields the result of more weight lifted, then it's good in their mind. Whereas bodybuilders, if it's not isolating that specific muscle group, or if they're not feeling the muscle working and they're only using leverages in order to accomplish it, that is not good because that will not lead to the best results. So it's not only just like what movements they're doing, it's what the end goal is of that specific sport or endeavor, whatever you want to call it, that leads to better health outcomes from bodybuilding. There's no question about it.
This segues into something I'm interested in about you specifically. I guess the first question is, was your 4X bodyweight deadlift the peak of your powerlifting career? And
Yes.
And two, why did you choose to not, continue powerlifting if it's even like if it was a conscious decision, and trying to just push more weight and get stronger and stronger and stronger on the big three?
Yeah, so there's a lot there. It was a very conscious. So first, yes, that was my peak. Deadlifting 4 times my body weight was my peak. I was also squatting about triple body weight at that time, and bench pressing about 2x body weight at that time. So I was like 2, 3, 4 bench squat deadlift, which was like very, very good.
Even though you hadn't squatted for 8 weeks leading up to that meet.
That's exactly right. And actually that leads into one of the reasons why I quit. Why did I not squat very much leading up to that meet before my 4x bodyweight deadlift? Is because my hip was in so much pain. I couldn't squat without unbelievable pain in my hip. And I was dating a different girl at the time, and we would lift together. She competed in powerlifting as well. And like she was always like, what are you doing? Like, I would be squatting, and every rep, I can't even begin to tell you the excruciating pain in my hip. And I was like 24 years old. 24, and I was like, I'm going to need a hip replacement soon. Like it was bad. And my technique, it was amazing. My technique was so good. It was just, I had done too much. I had put too much stress. We're not designed to lift 3 and 4 times our body weights. We're not designed to be able to put 3 times our body weight on our back, 4 times our body weight in our hand, and do that over and over and over again on a regular basis. And so my body started to show that. And so one of the main reasons I wanted to stop was because I was in so much pain. Another reason, and it's partly because I was in pain, but also I wasn't having fun with it anymore. I didn't enjoy it as much. And so I remember after I hit 4X, I was like, getting 4.2X is not going to make my business any better. It's not going to drive more people to me. It's not going to make any of that. And I was just like, I wasn't looking forward to my workouts anymore. I wasn't excited about it. I didn't enjoy writing about it, talking about it. I was tired of it. So I made a decision, a very conscious decision to quit powerlifting and retire from powerlifting. But I remember it being so conscious because I was petrified. Up to that point in my career, everything I had done was built off my powerlifting. And I was petrified that my business was going to go under and I was going to lose everything because everybody knew me as a powerlifter. And so it was a conscious decision. I was like, I'm only 24, 25 now. I don't want this to be my whole life when I don't even fucking like it anymore. And I'm in so much pain from it. So yeah, it was a very conscious decision to change directions.
Cool.
Let's see. A PT once told me to always take leucine and creatine with protein powder, BS or not.
Well, let's talk about the creatine one first. No, it's not important to take creatine with protein powder. The timing of creatine ingestion is irrelevant to the benefit that you derive from the creatine. So I guess the question would be a standalone. Does it make sense to take creatine? For most people, yes. There's more recent research around brain and potentially even heart a little. Don't quote me on that. Definitely some cognitive upside to supplementing with creatine. We've all seen 30,000, infographics that say that creatine is the most heavily researched supplement going back the furthest, and that it doesn't make you lose your hair, and it doesn't make you ruin your kidneys, and it doesn't do these things that naysayers says it does, but rather that for people who are responders to creatine, it will have some marginal benefit in strength gains, which, hooray, great. I take it, something like 20 to 25 grams a week spread out over 3, 4, 5, 6 days, however you want to do it, is awesome. I don't know if you have anything you want to add on creatine.
No, I'll add when you're done.
Leucine is the amino acid most responsible for muscle growth. Based on the evidence I have seen, where if you have, if you're getting adequate protein and like whatever a reasonable percentage of leucine is, as a percentage of that protein, compared to someone getting the same amount of protein, so you're getting adequate protein and also supplementing an extra 5 grams of leucine a day, 10 grams of leucine a day. This is something that Lane Norton, he might have done his like PhD
Doctorate
thesis,
yeah,
on this specifically. No, there is very little, if any, benefit to adding leucine to your regular protein supplement for the purposes of muscle growth, muscle retention and deficit, whatever it may be.
Yeah. I agree on all that. The creatine one is interesting for me. I just see everybody and their mother making Instagram posts about why everyone needs to be taking creatine. And I really just think it has less to do with everybody firmly believing that they need to take creatine and more to do with coaches not knowing what to make content about. And so they're like, oh, okay, well, I'll just make content about this. And like they make content about creatine. And I think it's, I don't know. Maybe this is the older curmudgeon in me coming out. I just think it's obnoxious. It's like people lifted without taking creatine for many, 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 many years, and they did totally fine. It's great if you want to take it, but I think this is there's a lot of people are reaching right now, even especially with lately a big talk around creatine has been like the neuroprotective benefits of it, how it can actually be good for mental health. And number one, like I don't argue against it, but I do think the research on that is still very preliminary for people to be coming out and saying things like, well, this is definitely good for that, and like saying it can prevent against things like Alzheimer's, which I'm like, that's a pretty hefty fucking statement. Like especially with people who have family members who struggle with something like Alzheimer's, to be like, oh, well, if you take this and it could help prevent against it. It's like, nah, let's talk to your fucking doctor and not make these massive, massive claims just yet. If it does, amazing. But like, I think it's too early to be saying that. The other thing is, I've never been a big let's hammer home what supplements people need to be taking, because most people aren't doing anything, period. Like the first question people, oh, what should I do? Like as soon as they want to start working out, what supplements? All right, well, how about you just work out for 3 years first and get 8 hours of sleep and make sure you're hydrated and getting enough protein, period, before we start, like, well, make sure you add in creatine and all that stuff. So yeah, my thoughts on that. And the neuroprotective benefits one just, it really irks me. I'm like, there's so many things you could do for your brain health that are probably infinitely better than taking 5 grams of creatine a day. It's like, why don't we talk about that? Like, cool, you want to talk about working out and nutrition for fat loss and for health, all that, great. But if you want to talk about brain health and your first recommendation is taking creatine, like, you're out of your fucking mind.
Well, I think we know why. Because it's easy. Like it's
easy.
It's easy to put 5 grams of something in your protein shake and think that you're getting the same benefit as some other, like, you know, doing 5 hours of zone 2 cardio a week or getting X number of steps per day, which, you know, aerobic exercise.
I think people playing chess would be better off for brain health than taking creatine. I think people like learning a new skill, reading a book, something like that would be way better than taking creatine for brain health.
I'm almost certain, I mean, you might be right on that, but I'm almost certain that all of those things aren't anywhere as beneficial for brain health. Chess, brain teasers, like the Sudokus. Yeah, exactly. As physical fitness is by far the number one, based on my, you know, distant understanding of the region.
I know obviously it's super important, but yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons, here we go again. It's one of the reasons I love jiu-jitsu. It's just like, you get the best of both worlds in one. It's like, I was talking about this with Susan, because every time she comes to Dallas, we do jiu-jitsu together, and, you know, she's early on in her white belt journey, and she's just like, one of the things we talk about is it's so good for Like the mental aspect of it is so great because it's this skill that is beyond anything that we've ever done before. And it also incorporates, longer duration cardio as well. So it's like just the ultimate.
Hang on. So you think that using your brain is more beneficial for brain health than physical health is for brain health?
I don't know. I'm not well versed enough on the literature, nor
Me
am
neither.
I.
Nor does the literature even know. But if you had to pick between the two,
If I had to, so we're going back to the I can't prove this but segment. I can't prove this, but I very much believe from a brain health perspective, I think using your brain in a thinking capacity is probably better for your brain than just simply, like, for example, if I'm doing zone 2 cardio 45 minutes while watching a movie versus sitting down and playing chess or reading a new book or learning, I would assume that do the sitting down activity where I'm actually using my brain more decisively and more like to make these decisions over and over and over again and taking in new information and learning it, I would imagine that is better for brain health than just the zone 2.
Interesting.
Do you think the opposite?
Yeah, I do.
Why? Just what your gut thinks?
It's mostly my gut, but a lot of it was based on the Alzheimer's and like dementia research from who's that doctor that I actually really liked a lot of the stuff he was putting out. And then during COVID, he like became CNN's guy, and then Rogan had him on and they had this big
Sanjay Gupta.
Yeah. He wrote a really solid book, and a lot of the literature he talked about around.
Did you read his book?
Yeah. This was before any of this, but yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I knew of him from that, and I loved the guy. Actually,
He pissed me off on Rogan.
Absolutely.
He wouldn't denounce the people that were clearly lying, and like he and I get it because he wanted to be loyal, but also he probably didn't want to lose his job more than anything. It's like his coworkers clearly did some really bad shit, and he just would refuse to denounce it.
The research he cited in that book around Alzheimer's and dementia prevention related to, I don't remember exactly. Like it wasn't like do your zone 2, but it was aerobic and anaerobic and strength-based work compared to doing things that test your brain. It was overwhelmingly, be in good physical health overall is the best thing you can do for your brain.
Now that is very interesting.
We don't live in a world where you have to pick one, thankfully. So
right, you could do both.
Do both. Absolutely.
If that's the case, then I'm killing the brain health game right now.
Yeah.
And I'm
absolutely.
super excited. But yeah, my gut just tells me that's not accurate. But what the fuck do I know? I'm not a fucking brain researcher. I have no idea. So I don't know. But I think of it in the terms of like the brain's a muscle, right?
An organ, like in order to, I have no idea. I have no clue. Both. And we'll find out.
Yeah, do both. And maybe creatine as well.
But back to the original point. Yeah, it's like, that seems like the shortcut to something rather than doing the 5 to 7 harder things. It's like, oh, well, you're binge drinking 4 nights a week. You don't sleep enough. You're not actually strength training. Your nutrition's crap. You're da-da-da-da-da. It's like, but I want to take creatine. It's like, no. We'll get to that. Let's take care of these things that actually matter. And then if you want that like 1% benefit that can compound over years, sure, we can explore that. But let's not procrastinate.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you very much for watching, listening at Personal Trainer Podcast on all social media platforms. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review. It helps us a ton and helps other people find the podcast. We appreciate you listening. Weekly uploads. 2023 is the year. Let's go. See you next week.
Have a good one.